Gary Russell Jr. loses his WBC belt. He was the longest reigning champion active in boxing, but the performance may not be what you think, even though he lost. Stay tuned. I'm going to talk about that. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Now, we ain't got no time to waste. It's cracking. I'm going to start off with the post-fight interview that Gary Russell conducted. Roll the clip.
Strategy from that point on when you knew it wouldn't be effective.
Coach Freddie and Coach Marvin said to me, just good combination.
That changed the entire complexion of this fight, correct?
Yes, the jab. Yeah.
He couldn't jab you.
Yeah, I guess he didn't jab. He's only using one hand. That's why I get him hurt a lot.
Since he was hurt and impaired, would you give him a rematch?
It's up to Sir Charles Gibbons and my promotions. It's up to them. But I'm willing to fight anybody now. I'm a champion now.
You are a champion right now. Congratulations to you. Let us talk to Gary.
Hey, brother, take it.
And display my support. I believe I have.
You didn't want to say what it was that you were hurt. What was the problem with your right arm or right shoulder?
Oh man, I believe I have a torn tendon in my right shoulder. I haven't competed in almost 2 years. This is what true champions do. I wanted to step into the ring and display my superiority, regardless of an injury or whatnot. We did that. I gave him a boxing lesson. The whole way through. I landed clean whenever I wanted to. I couldn't use my right arm, but I was still able to throw effective shots and touch him at will.
When did you know that you were impaired? At what point in training camp?
About 2 weeks ago.
So why did you go through with the fight?
I'm a true champion. This is what warriors do. I fight regardless of what the situation is. I refuse to not compete and display my skill set to my fans, to the people that came out to show support and love. Please believe I will be back. I still want these fights. I'm about to get my shoulder fixed and we back at it. We booging.
So keep in mind that Gary Russell Jr., despite being at a disadvantage and being injured leading up to the fight, and just in case anybody was wondering, Gary Russell, for what I don't know why, but because this was abnormal to me, but Gary Russell declared that he was injured going into the fight, and people thought he was doing this as a jest or a joke, or saying that he was injured as some kind of skullduggery to get under Magsayo's skin, or get him to fight an ineffective game plan. But just in case you want to see, boom, we got action. I always come with the facts. Gary Russell opens up on Mark Magsayo pre-fight injury. During the fight, I'm sure people will be able to see something. Again, people thought Gary Russell he was being disingenuous, but he told you he was injured before the fight. And it was apparent because he literally stopped throwing his right hand and he's a right-hander. He stopped throwing his right hand for 7-8 rounds or whatever the case is. So it's not like he was fooling us and he just wanted to come up with pre-made excuses, because there's no one would fight a dangerous puncher off of a menacing knockout and they're going to go into the fight and literally try to fight someone one-handed if they're not really injured and be wincing and having this Golden Globes, Emmy award-winning, Oscar-winning performance.
Strategy from that point on. So much on the line. What you're saying is you'd rather come out and compete than be in top physical shape before the fight.
That was a weird question by Jim Gray. He said, why did you fight? And he told you, and he said, so you didn't want to be in the best shape and the best physical condition. And this is what Gary Russell said.
No, that's not actually the case. Like I say, I had almost a 2-year layoff. I was itching to get back in the ring and compete. I injured my shoulder about 2 weeks ago in the training camp. I refused to postpone this fight and push it back. I believed in my skill set and what I bring into the ring. I felt like I still wanted to fight, to be honest with you.
And do you feel you're going to need surgery?
It's possible. They wanted me to. It's an old injury, you know. I had.
Now, I want you guys to pay specific attention to when Gary Russell announced that it was a majority decision loss, quote unquote, upset loss. And when he announced that he lost or that he thought he still won the fight despite being impaired, notice no one booed. No one, booed him in the crowd.
I was itching to get back in the ring and compete. I injured my shoulder about 2 weeks ago in the training camp. I refused to postpone this fight and push it back. I believed in my skill set and what I bring into the ring. I felt like I still wanted to fight, to be honest with you.
And do you feel you're going to
see nobody actually booed, which is a stark contrast to Teofimo Lopez when he announced before in his post-fight interview, he announced after the Kambosos fight that he's like, yeah, I beat him. Y'all know I won. And then everyone in his hometown started booing him. So to me, this was really a close fight. Gary Russell conducted himself like a true scholar of the sport. And I was really impressed with his ability to box when he was clearly impaired. But unfortunately in boxing, it's such a race-driven sport where you have a lot of people who they're just looking and they're happy because a black fighter lost, to be honest. And we've seen, like when Gervonta Davis fought Isaac Pitbull Cruz, clearly he had hand injuries. Nobody cared. So me, as a true fan of boxing, I don't care what your skin color is, your age, gender, boom, boom, boom. But I'm going to celebrate the sweet science and people who find a way to get it done or put on performances like Gary Russell Jr., Gervonta Davis, despite odds. Even though Gary Russell lost his fight, I thought the fight was very close. Even though he was one-handed, of course, you would like to see. And I'm not saying this, I'm not even mad at Magsayo winning, because I know a lot of emotional fans, they think, oh, you're saying this because you're mad. I'm not mad. Gary Russell has been pretty inactive. I was just giving you my opinion. I'm impressed that a man can be off for 2 years, tell you have an injury before the fight. It shows up in the fight. It was clear that he had an injury, and yet and still he's out here boxing with finesse. That's impressive to me. But the Showtime commentary didn't seem to be as impressed as I was when it comes to that, which we'll get to in a second in the final part of this video.
need surgery?
It's possible. They wanted me to. It's an old injury. I had this back before the 2008 Olympics. They wanted me to go and get surgery on it. I refused to go and get surgery on it. They said I can strengthen the muscles around it to actually protect the tendon. I didn't do it. I actually strengthened the muscles. I was able to get through a lot of my fights and stuff, but I heard it in my training camp. But once again, I'm a true soldier. I'm a dog at the end of the day. I refused to put this fight back, and I fought with one arm. He had his hands full with the fighter with one arm. The whole fight, I gave him a boxing lesson.
He said he had his hands full with a fighter with one arm. And again, you would think that this behavior in boxing would be celebrated. He said, I'm a soldier, I'm a dog. I could have canceled the fight, like Jim Gray was asking him, like, why didn't you just pull out, postpone it? He said, I didn't want to postpone it. I was still confident in my skills, and I still thought I beat him, even though I was one-handed. And I showed my superiority and showed you that I'm a gifted fighter. And you can't really deny that at least he's gifted. Like, my thing is this, again, I'm not mad Magsayo won. Congrats to him. But if you really put this in perspective, what is more impressive? A fighter fighting a guy who won, looks way bigger, who looks huge for featherweight, and he just had a devastating knockout in his last fight, and he's missing. And a guy, how creative can you even be when you only got one arm? You only have one punch to throw, and you don't have two hands. So that's not Magsayo's fault. I get that. This was an injury. Gary Russell, pushed on and things like that. But to me, I'm going to give that credit because it shows everything Gary Russell said post-fight. He is a dog. He willing to fight like that with a clear deficit. That's some insane willpower.
In my training camp, but once again, I'm a true soldier. I'm a dog at the end of the day. I refuse to put this fight back, and I fought with one arm. He had his hands full with the fighter with one arm. The whole fight, I gave him a boxing lesson.
Will you request a rematch based on the condition you were in?
Hell yeah. Will he want a rematch?
I don't know, but
That's the question. I'll rematch him.
all right, Gary. Hope your shoulder gets healed up, and we'll see you next time.
Oh yeah, to my fans.
So Gary Russell, unlike when Magsayo was asked the same question, he said basically it's up to my promotion, on some Pacquiao stuff. It's up to my promoter, Gary Russell made it clear. He said, heck yeah, HE double hockey stick, yeah, I want that. He said, will he rematch me? That's the question. And Jim Gray says, I don't know. And he said, well, that's the question, you and the fans pretty much need to be asking. So, props to Magsayo. He moves on. But I was really impressed that a one-handed fighter was even in the fight. Like, you should be, couldn't you imagine? Let's get to some of my tweets. I said Showtime commentary was kind of riding Magsayo heavy in round one. So I noticed this in round one. I'm the GOAT when it comes to this boxing talk. I actually like Gary Russell Jr. establishing his jab. Like, I didn't, and it got to a point, I didn't even score this fight. So I don't even really know. I don't have an official scorecard. And I said Magsayo has a sneaky uppy. Gary's defense so far is sharp. This is also all before, this is the early goings before Gary Russell got injured. Magsayo not only signed to Manny Pacquiao, he got them big calves just like him too. So I noticed, he has big calves. Magsayo is throwing some good body shots. Magsayo is big AF at featherweight. Did Magsayo hurt him? This is a good one. This is what I noticed in real time. You guys can verify with the timestamp. I said, did Magsayo hurt him or did he hurt himself throwing his punch, meaning Gary Russell? Either way, he winced visibly. I got to see it again because it didn't look like a punch landed, and I was 1000% correct because I'm the GOAT when it comes to this boxing talk. Gary Russell hurt himself throwing the punch, and then he later declared what he said post-fight about being injured was true, and he basically was in the fight injured. So that decision is entirely Gary Russell Jr.'s problem, so to speak. And I said Showtime commentary been going downhill lately, in my opinion, because I noticed they were being super biased. See, it was his own shot that injured himself, like I said. Actually impressive that Gary Russell Jr. is fighting with one arm and he was jabbing nonstop, even though the CompuBox after this point said he wasn't throwing jabs or whatever. But this was right when when his hand was first known about visibly. I said, but all the commentaries about Magsayo is doing the most. But you would think that a guy one arm would be getting annihilated, but that's not the case so far, right? I said boxing commentary is in a weird space. A guy is fighting with one arm and fighting responsibly with a visible handicap. This is not like he said, she said, word of mouth. You heard on the streets. We can see something's wrong with him, right? And I said, just like Gervonta Davis, and Magsayo seems is in one mode and actually was boxing smarter before Gary winced and abandoned the right hand. Gary is pot-shotting Magsayo with one hand. So my takeaway was this. Magsayo was actually more diligent and sneakier and really doing better work before that moment where Gary Russell abandoned his hurt right hand. And when he made that wince where he's like, after that moment, Magsayo actually maybe got gung-ho thinking he was going to get Gary Russell out of there, and he abandoned what he was doing that was right. Kind of a rookie mistake. And I said, Magsayo, his defense is non-existent. I said, this is what the commentary said. It said, from time to time that left gets in, but Gary landed 4 lefts in a row last round. LOL. Showtime commentary is wildin'. And just to give you guys ego perspective, I said, can you imagine Floyd Mayweather? Easy work. Like I said, can you imagine Floyd Mayweather fighting a guy off of a 2-year layoff who is smaller, and Floyd Mayweather was much bigger than that guy? Then that guy picked up an injury or had a pre-existing injury, and he had one arm since round 4, and the fight is anywhere near close or competitive. So once again, I'm not impressed with some of the things that impress apparently a lot of you guys. if Floyd Mayweather fought a guy he was naturally way bigger than, and the fight shouldn't even be competitive, Floyd would blow that person out because he blows out two-handed fighters that aren't injured, and he's the smaller fighter. The guys like Canelo, 15, 20 pounds bigger than him. And I spelled his name wrong, but I said Al Bernstein is wilding. You know, it's just bad commentary on the telecast. I said, are we all watching the same fight? You have a right-handed fighter who cannot use his right hand and is boxing very well offensively and defensively, and people are acting unimpressed. LOL. It's mind-blowing how we can all be watching the same thing. You know, people are trying to turn boxing like it's supposed to be super subjective, like what's your favorite pizza? But boxing is actually supposed to be scored based on certain metrics, if you actually know. A commentator said that Gary was trying to pot shot, and I said he is pot shotting. And then Al Bernstein said, quote, not to say he's landing many of them. And I'm like, bro, I see Magsayo's head getting rocked back with the same punch with left hands. But Al Bernstein, what he was saying was laughable. He was saying that none of them were getting through. There was a moment where Russell, he had his elbows tucked. Russell blocked two body shots and body shot attempts from Magsayo, elbows tucked. Bernstein said, that's exactly what Magsayo needs to do. And I'm like, what the F? Like, what are we watching? Shout out to my Niners. Bang, bang, gang, gang. Let's go. Great win. Lambeau Field was looking shook. Freddie Roach, and to prove my commentary was on point, Freddie Roach said after these moments, is all in chronological order, quote, 2 more rounds like that, don't give this fight right away. Don't give this fight away. Why would Freddie Roach, Magsayo's corner, say that after round 10, saying, hey, just give me 2 more solid rounds, blah, blah, blah. And yet Showtime commentary was making it sound like Magsayo was doing easy work. And I said, man, Farhood with another trash scorecard. Round 11 was Magsayo's best round in a minute. Very good round for Magsayo. See, fair, objective commentary. Andre Ward, an actual fighter, says a lot of guys who get injured start to mentally drift, get that glossy look in their eyes, and give the referee or the doctor the old winky wink and call it a night. We know Gary Russell did not do that. He's a true savage, a true dog. That's what I said. I don't care what anyone says. Gary Russell is a dog. The commentary was insanely biased. You see 42 likes. Follow me at BOXINGEGO. And I said, this is after the fight ended, I said, y'all more impressed with a guy much bigger going 12 rounds with a one-handed fighter than you are with a fighter fighting with one arm for 8 rounds. Insane. This is pure insanity. Boxing, you know, there's nothing like it in good ways and bad. Like Jay-Z said, y'all respect the ones who got shot. I respect the shooter. Man, you guys are telling me I'm supposed to be blown away by a guy who is pretty much having his hands full in a competitive fight, right? With Gary Russell Jr. to the point where it's a majority decision and this guy's being defensively responsible. And look, oh, that's the shot he landed. I guess he landed. You know what I mean? You know, it's not to take anything away from Magsayo, but I was actually impressed that we were seeing a one-handed fighter. I would like to see him run it back, to be honest. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Congrats to Magsayo. I thought the Showtime commentary was very poor. You know, they weren't seemingly giving Gary Russell any level of credit. And like I said in those tweets, I think he's owed a lot of respect from the boxing fraternity. But you could tell the race fans, they don't care about none of that. They just happy a black fighter who had a belt for so long lost, because apparently there was no other takeaways. I think Magsayo still needs some work based on the fact that, again, he had a one-handed Gary Russell who was visibly smaller, and he couldn't like put him away, knock him down, and actually he looked more effective offensively and wasn't missing as much before Gary Russell, you know, was physically impaired even more so, or like when it was brought out in the fight, you know. But that's my opinion. You know, tough luck for Gary Russell, who's not the most active guy. Congrats to Magsayo. It was a decent fight, but I would like to see a run back, because ultimately it was very visible that both guys weren't healthy. You know, you can say whatever you want. Subscribe to the channel. I'm out. The future is now. The Hibernation 5s by Kenichi Bear. Hybrid gaming and lifestyle headphones. Out of the box, you can connect to any console or PC. Bluetooth ready. with a low latency USB adapter, color RGB, and extreme bass mode. The Hibernation 5s adjust to you. Whether you need a gaming, travel, gym, or lifestyle headphones, the Hibernations got you covered. The new Hibernation 5s, link in the description, customize the way you hear the world. Welcome to the nation. Are you tired of your YouTube videos not getting any views? Well, consider TubeBuddy. I've used TubeBuddy for years to scale up my YouTube channel. Now we're sitting over 200,000 subscribers. TubeBuddy is a browser extension that offers a ton of built-in productivity and time-saving services to take your channel to the next level. Use my link in the description to get started with TubeBuddy and level up your channel faster.